today's talk is about renunciation. And I'm talking about this now because I just finished a series of talks on to turn one's mind to the Dharma. And we need to constantly remind ourselves of these to help us keep focused, to not lose sight of where we want to spend our time and our energy. And so to review this briefly, precious human birth is the first of these thoughts. And we need to understand how fortunate we are compared to the ocean of possibilities that we could have been reborn as. And that we need to take advantage of this very rare opportunity while we still have our life in our present form. The second is impermanence, and contemplating that the change is constantly happening and we do not really have that much control over change. It leads us to be aware of the imminence of death and the ultimate futility of worldly activities and accomplishments. The third is about karma, and this helps us direct our mind towards reducing and easing suffering and increasing happiness, partially in the present, but primarily in the future. This allows us to gain control of our lives and steer it or lead it or create it in a direction that will eventually free us from samsara and suffering. And then the last one is the unsatisfactory state of samsara. And this is that there is no end to samsara, that there is no end to the suffering that is within samsara, that suffering follows samsara like our shadow follows us on a sunny day. That day after day after day, it's more of the same thing. More pain, more suffering with breaks in between. Sometimes we think if I just change the channel, things will be all right, and we change the channel, and it's the same old, same old. So all of these are intended to lead to renunciation. And that's what I want to talk about today. To put it very simply, what renunciation means is to renounce samsara. And of course, that's very difficult for us to do. In fact, it's impossible. So we do it little by little. But the idea is that we renounce the suffering of samsara and we realize these are the things that are causing us to suffer. I have an extended quote that I want to read here. This comes from the book Ocean of Philosophy, and it is a book about Trangu Rinpoche. And this extended quote here is a very beautiful, brief teaching on the Mahamudra lineage supplication about the 4 lines that talk about meditation is the renunciation is the foot of meditation. Just as it is taught that this revulsion for cyclic existence is like the foot of meditation. Do not be attached to any of the appearances of this life, such as the 8 worldly dharmas, food, wealth, any possessions, sweet talk, or words of fame. Rather, being a child of the mountains, wearing the mist as your clothes, and entrusting yourself to the plainest of foods, clothing, and speech. Do not have even a hair's worth of interest in anything other than just the genuine Dharma. The ties to this life are thus completely severed, and you should engage in the methods to turn the mind away from cyclic existence. Reflect on the precious human body endowed with the 18 freedoms and riches, which is so very difficult to find. Also contemplate that you are subject to impermanence. It is uncertain when you will die, and you are not beyond the nature of it being mortal, and you will die soon. Think about the manner in which at the time of death you will simply follow your virtuous or unvirtuous karma, but you will not happen upon happiness and be able to escape from suffering just as you please. Contemplate that by following your karma, no matter where you will be reborn in the 3 realms of cyclic existence, you will not go beyond the 3 kinds of suffering. Through meditating on these common preliminaries, the 4 reminders that turn the mind away from cyclic existence within the 3 realms. Grant your blessings so that this meditator whose attachment to cyclic existence is severed by that way, which is like the foot of meditation, does not encounter any temporary adverse circumstances, such as demonic obstacles, being busy, fame, honor, and gain, and if they are encountered, does not crave for them. Through supplicating in this way, the verse of guidance on the common preliminaries is taught. So that is, you might say, a very clear and concise teaching on renunciation. Now, needless to say, we can't do that. We can't be a child of the mountain mists and so forth. We're not able to behave like Milarepa did with his renunciation. But I want to go into this in a little bit more detail. The first is he mentions the 8 worldly dharmas, and they are praise and blame. We get very concerned about not getting enough praise and getting way too much blame. On the other hand, we also get very concerned about praising other people and blaming other people. The second of these pairs is a gain and loss. We want to experience as much gain as possible of whatever it is, whatever good things there are out there. And we want to avoid as little a loss of good things as possible. Fame and obscurity is the third of these 4 pairs. And we want to have people respect us. We want to have people think well of us. Now, it depends on your circle of friends, because in some circles, being bad is considered being good, and so forth. And you want to be famous for being bad. The opposite is either obscurity, where nobody cares about you, or infamy, where people care about you, but they're talking about you in ways that you don't want them to be talking about you. And finally, the last of these pairs is pleasure and pain. And Again, we want as much pleasure as possible, and we want to separate ourselves from all pain and try very hard. And this keeps us in samsara. Again, we can't just completely renounce this kind of behavior entirely. Where it starts is being aware of what's going on in our mind. And without the awareness, you can't work with it. So it's extremely important to be aware of these 8 worldly dharmas and observe how your mind goes as you're going through your daily life. So, and actually, this teaching about that Trangu Rinpoche gave is really at one level. You can get many different teachings from the same teacher, and they may even seem contradictory. But for instance, you will find that excessive attachment is really a bigger problem. So we need to keep aware of our attachments, and it isn't to just let go of everything, but realize that there are limits to our attachment, and that the stronger the attachment, the more of a problem it is. I guess another way to put it is that let's go talking a little bit about food and attachment to food. Now, we need to eat food to survive, and we want to be able to benefit other people, to be caring for other people. And if we don't survive, we can't care for other people. So if you start thinking about food more like this is part of the regimen that I need to be involved with to be able to care for other people, to be able to practice and travel along the path and so forth, then you can realize that maybe not getting exactly what you want is not a big deal. There is a line in the aspiration prayer from the Bodhisattva's way of life that we repeat once a day when we do Nyungne, and it is, may I be sustained by simple common food, that we don't need gourmet food. Good food is fine. Food that is promotes the health of our body is fine. It's excellent. But if we can't find that and we still have to eat, then we're satisfied and not upset with what we do eat. It's good to, as I said, look within and see how reactive we are to things, how we react to things outside of us, and especially the emotions, habitual patterns, and other things that are going on inside of us. We need to have this desire for freedom. We need to have sympathy for ourselves. We need to develop sympathy for ourselves, so that renunciation is not a matter of punishing ourselves. And so part of renunciation is letting go of renouncing attitudes towards ourselves that we find are tinged with anger, are tinged with punishment, are tinged with self-loathing, and all kinds of other negative attitudes about ourselves, are tinged with, oh, I could never do that, and so forth. That we need to let go of these attitudes and replace them with attitudes that are more caring. We need to renounce our attachment to always feeling secure. That this is all about solidity and you might say living within our own little box or our cage. That there's a big world out there. It's full of uncertainty. It's full of sentient beings. And if we are going to step out into it as a bodhisattva, as a caring person, we have to give up the idea of security. And of course, one of the big sources of security is our ego, this fictional, fabricated ego of ours that is solid and unchanging and so forth. We have to recognize our kleshas as kleshas and little by little work on renouncing them. And again, working with a more caring attitude towards other people. First, we work on developing a more caring attitude towards ourselves, and then we broaden it to other people. We have to renounce seeing ourselves and others as being ordinary instead of having Buddha nature and being, you might say, underdeveloped Buddhas. I know Khenpo Rinpoche would see everybody with what is called in Vajrayana sacred outlook, that everybody he would view as an enlightened being that just has not recognized their enlightened quality, their Buddha nature. And then finally, renouncing laziness, procrastination, putting things off, self-deprecation, like I could never do that, and replace it with diligence, especially when it comes to practicing the Dharma. It's amazing how diligent we can be when it comes to samsaric activities and how much we're willing to do and energy expend, and even how tired we can get when we are pursuing samsara. But when it comes to pursuing the Dharma, oh, I'm tired. I don't have time to do that. Da, 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 da. Finally, I have a quote here. This is again an extended quote by Traleg Rinpoche. And this is really at the Vajrayana level of renunciation. So it depends on where you are on the path, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. The Mahayana is when we're concern with other people and how we are benefiting or not benefiting other people. Here at the Vajrayana level, it's different. So I'm going to read this quote and then I'll discuss it a little bit. Renunciation is not about renouncing things. That's easy to do. But renouncing the revolting mind, the stinking piece of Swiss cheese, that's more difficult. And we have to do that. What that means is we can have proper relationships with people. We have to work with our environment. We have to live in this world, and we can live in this world very successfully, being a very caring, loving person, interacting with everything that surrounds us, while not being damaged by that stinking Swiss cheese. That's called the samsaric mind, the mind that finds everything revolting. Unless it likes what it sees, smells, touches, interacts with, then it's revolting. But what stinks there is not what the mind sees as stinking. It is the mind that thinks something or other is absolutely revolting, disgusting, despicable. That's the one that is stinking. So this is for, you might say, advanced practitioners. And the idea here is that we are bodhisattvas in training in the world, and we can be, as he said, we can be in the world successfully. We can be caring, loving, interacting with everything that we interact with, and not be damaged by it. But what we have to do is renounce accepting and rejecting. We have to be more open. That instead of finding certain things very, very pleasant and desirable, and then rejecting everything else, and thinking that what we're rejecting is a quality of what we're rejecting, that is the problem, because these qualities of rejecting are not in the object, they are in us. We are projecting our ideas, our values, our prejudice, our mental conditioning on the world. And this is what needs to be rejected, is seeing things more clearly, more openly, seeing things as they are without, you might say, embellishing them or altering them. I like to say that when you are an enlightened being, you have experienced and dwell in an unaltered state of mind. But this Swiss cheese mind is an altered state of mind. It's not seeing things correctly at all. It is just projecting, projecting, and projecting.